who don't know who you are, Nathan, give me a little briefing of
Yeah.
how Lima doing this. What have you pretty much been doing? Where are you from?
So I live just outside of Montreal in Canada. And to answer the first question I get, no, I don't do anything in Canada. Everything I do is in the United States. The last thing I bought in Canada for properties was in 2006. I was flipping some houses out in Western Canada. But anyway, I got into notes kind of by accident. I think like a lot of people, that's kind of how we end up here. But I started going to some conferences, heard whispers about these non-performing notes, and I thought, oh, that sounds super risky. And then gave it a first try in 2010 and went, oh, this is awesome. This is great. This is in a lot of ways a lot easier, a lot cleaner than properties. And so the further I go along, the more I learn. And it's just been a great experience. I hope to do it for a long time to come.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think, those who are new to the space have a lot to learn. But I also think those experience, we're always learning. Our experience doesn't change or doesn't stop learning, do deals, stuff like that. Typically, what kind of deals have you bought? I mean, you've been doing this for longer than I've been, which is crazy. When did you first get started? What year was that about?
So in 2008, I started with me and my old business partner. We were kind of handed a portfolio of 60 properties, mostly in the Midwest, but kind of spread out all over. And my very first kind of entrance into it was I did a driving tour to see what we had. And I got to go and tour all the properties. A lot of them were just junk. We had no operating budget. We had nothing. So we had to kind of come up with something. And we're both from Canada. We thought we'd kind of invented seller financing. So we're so smart. This is going to be awesome. So we started selling properties on seller financing because we had no operating budget, no way to renovate these properties or anything. So started like that. So and then it kind of progressed and got into contracts for deed. It was mostly Ohio. They call them land contracts there. But mostly selling stuff on land contract in Ohio. And then I started buying a couple of mortgages and some non-performing mortgages. And then a few years back, 2015 maybe, started seeing some of these non-performing contracts for deed coming up. Wow. And at the time, really nobody knew what they were. And I was like, are you kidding? This is what I grew up on. This is perfect. So I bought a bunch of those. I still buy those. Lease options or something I just got into last year, which are very, very similar to contracts for deed and mortgages, of course. But I like first position. I've never done any second position stuff.
Cool. It's amazing because, as big as small as the space is, there are so many different aspects that we're all different, that we can be competitive but not be competitive at the same time. Yeah. CFD, land contract, something I didn't do. I know I've teamed up with you on a couple in the past. Yeah. It's just the nervousness. The first position, larger loans are always more comfortable for us as investors. Yeah. Seconds is attractive too. It's just not our cup of tea, but nothing wrong with them. So It's interesting. So if you could share a deal that you've had that went just haywire, kind of briefing.
So looking back, if I start analyzing deals over time, and I do on a fairly regular basis, the ones that go funky are the ones where I take the property back. Almost without, not all of them go crazy like that, but the ones that do, almost always, it's when I took back a property. I don't know that I've ever had a performing note, be a non-profitable note. They've always worked out.
Yeah.
But I had one just this year where I had it. The lady in the house, she was making payments sporadically here and there, and then just kind of went dark on us, and we ended up taking back the property. That one was that's one of my worst ones, where we took back the property and it was just a disaster. plus there'd been a bunch of city liens that had piled up and all this.
Uh,
So we ended up actually just giving it back to the county. I think I
Wow.
had it up for sale. We got an offer on it, and I was actually going to lose money on, like, it was no benefit.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
sold it, I was not going to make any more money than if I just let it go. So I let it go.
It's similar. A friend of ours, that's basically no one knows about in the space, behind the scenes REO guy. We had a deal together years ago where we had a first position. People moved out, didn't want it. We're going to sign D and Lou. We're all excited. Got a whole second position where they were in second, and then they wanted full UPB, and it's like, good Lord. And then we get in the house, and it's just, they moved out of it 5-6 years ago. Older people. And shake a head. Green Tree didn't know anything about the loan, all that kind of stuff. We have plenty of horror stories and plenty of successes. You're right. Performers seem to work out well.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
as much as I can, I try to just stick with the note. But and again, you get these horror stories, but obviously they're not all like that, or we wouldn't still be here. But they
yeah,
happen occasionally. So
yeah, and it's interesting because times were 8 years ago and today are completely different spaces,
oh yeah,
pricing and whatnot.
yeah,
And it's difficult to understand the differences, and even if we went back in time, we still would be stuck because at the time it seemed crazy to do anything different. Um, as we
yeah.
all joke around,
For sure, it was a huge leap of faith just to buy that first. I bought a package of 3 actually from our friend Jack,
yeah,
and that was a huge leap of faith because I'm like, it wasn't very much money. It was only 10 grand, so that's fine. But that could have been just down the toilet. I had no idea what I was going to do with these, but it worked out and made money on it. I thought, oh man, this is awesome. So,
and out of curiosity, pricing, because I was working for Jack at the time. What was the balance of those loans? Those 3 loans you bought for 10 grand.
I think so. And again, you got to go back in time because this is 2010. So the balance on it was something like, I don't know, $50,000-$60,000 on each one of them. But the property value is only about 20.
Yeah,
So this is way back before prices started to recover.
yeah,
So I was buying them based on property value.
yeah,
Which, and like I say, it worked out, and so that's great. But
yeah,
it was interesting.
yeah. And I think if we had a really bad one in the beginning, which I'm sure a lot of investors in the space do,
Yeah.
we'd be out of it, right?
Yeah.
We got lucky; our first deals worked out. So it's interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't buy CFDs. Share a little bit about what you like about CFDs versus original notes, besides the pricing, of course.
Yeah, pricing for sure is a big factor. I don't know, I think I like. So, well, there's a couple of things. So I know a lot of people go after bigger notes, and I totally get why, and it's bigger, bigger dollars coming back in, and so that's much more attractive for sure. At the same time, though, this year is I think it's the first time, and I'm pretty sure it's a CFD. It might be a mortgage, anyhow. At the price range that I buy in, this year is the first time that I ever had a borrower fight me on foreclosure. So I avoid a whole bunch of heartache and headache and just frustration by going after some of the less expensive stuff and the less sophisticated borrowers that are not going to have an attorney on call.
And for those, what we do, we limit our pricing range of the value of the property. We only buy 50,000 to about 250, depending on what state it is.
Yeah.
What's your trick to hopefully avoid those bothersome investors or borrowers?
I'm close. I go 50,000 property value up to 150. And then I figure after that, you're getting into, more sophisticated people where there's somebody that might have an attorney, at least a friend that they can call on and
yes,
cause trouble.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing for us is I think a lot of investors don't talk about is that to avoid that headache, buy the property that, sadly enough, the borrower doesn't have a lot of money to go out and hire somebody to fight our legal fact. Because 150 grand and you're spending 5 grand legal, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that I'm trying to take advantage of anybody or anything like that, but the way I look at it is I'm in first position. You haven't paid your mortgage or your
Yep.
house payment. In the end, I'm going to win. And so let's just make this as painless as possible. Save you some money, save us both some time and frustration, and just be done. You know, like it's kind of the tough love approach. But I'd rather not go through the fight to end up winning in the end and just have all that time and energy wrapped up in it. I don't want to bother with it.
It's interesting too, because you know, we always back up saying, listen, we're not trying to take advantage of anyone. But at the same time, this person didn't make a payment for whatever reason. And which I think borrowers don't know is call us up and tell us a story.
Absolutely.
Just tell us something and make it believable and back it up with something. Hey, listen, this is going on. Have I been played before? Absolutely been played. But at least make the effort. Then you know, because I'm not looking to kick you out of the house, but if you haven't made a payment, you're not communicating, I got to do something. This is still the mortgage secured by a property. And I promise you, a bank wouldn't give you any leeway at all if they still own the loan. Or even hedge funds for that matter.
No, I'm here to help, and I'm willing to help.
Yes.
But you got to talk to me and let me know what's going on, and then we'll see what we can do. And it might not always be, okay, yeah, no problem, you can just stay there. That might not be the answer, but like, let's at least have a conversation. And at the very least, I can help you get started somewhere else. The bank's not going to do that either.
No. And so what do you, when you're doing these CFDs and whatnot, are there certain states you're trying to avoid?
Yes. In general, New England is just tough. Anything New England, New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Maine, any of those. I've got one in Maine. It's just a major headache. I got another one in Connecticut that's not as bad, but they're a pain. So the New England states are tough. Most of the New England states don't recognize contracts for deed. They treat it the same as a mortgage, so there's no advantage. And then Florida is another one that doesn't recognize contracts for deed. But generally speaking, pretty much everywhere, and it's a different thing in different states. Louisiana, it's called a bond for deed. You know, it depends on where you are. Essentially, it's the same thing. But the foreclosure process is a lot more expedited at the very least. Sometimes it's just an eviction, but it's state by state. And I think that's, you know, we've talked about this a lot, and it's one of these things, and it's kind of the attorney answer, but it's true is, well, what about this situation? Well, it depends.
I hate that answer, but I understand it.
Because it does. Where are you? You know, what's the unpaid balance? And like, there's so many factors. It really depends.
We recently launched a bid calculator just a few days ago, and we did a whole webinar on that. And one of the conversations came up with CFDs. And unlike First, which has regulations, CFDs are very local in certain situations where it's just, and to figure out equity in the property that makes it foreclosure or not is very difficult. I mean, I know PA's all extremely difficult. And like Ohio, if you're 20% in, you have equity, it's become a mortgage. In every state's different. I believe counties start separating too. I don't know. Have you experienced where like a deal in two different parts of the state, one's considered to have to foreclose, one isn't?
Not so much per county, but I have had it different title agencies when I'm going to sell that property. For example, I've got one right now where I'm selling the house. So what happened was I bought the contractor deed in Indiana, and the people just agreed to leave. They signed it over, and I signed a release for them to release them from the contract. It had been recorded, which is another factor that you have to put in there. If it hadn't been recorded, we wouldn't have an issue, but it was recorded. So now, I had one title company, I'm selling the house. I had one title company say that the release that I had signed wasn't valid. They did a new one. That's fine. That's not a huge deal, but okay. But they're saying that the release actually wasn't going to be sufficient, that we would have to get the release and then also do a quiet title. I'm going, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, there's no reason. The release releases. That's the point. And so I talked to my attorney out there. Cecilia and Barilli are great, and they said, no, that's ridiculous. You know, try a different title company. So I did, and sure enough, they're like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Gosh.
Oh, it's interesting too, because when you're buying these CFDs, are you pricing strategy changed versus first position?
Not really. For me, we had a bit of a discussion on this, but for me, when I'm going into bid, I'm looking at, again, different factors. The difference between a CFD and a mortgage for pricing, there's not a huge difference in the way that I approach that. Usually the CFD is a little bit lower, just because still people are a little less familiar with them, and that's fine by me.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at, you know, unpaid balance versus property value. And then I'm also looking, not just that, but then I'm also looking at, as much as I can kind of guesstimate on what the situation is. Like, for example, if it's been vacant, if I know, I send my realtor out there to go check it out and they come back and tell me it's vacant, well, then I'm going to definitely, I'm pricing that off of the, or not the unpaid balance, but by the BPO value, because the unpaid balance at that point is useless. There's no chance of that person, or very, very low chance, I should say, that they're ever going to come back and reinstate or something like that. But if they've only missed, you know, 3 or 4 payments, then I'm looking more on the unpaid balance. The property value is definitely still a consideration, but I'm going to lean more towards the unpaid balance. So again, it depends, and
Yeah.
the situation is different.
And we had a semi debate during our bid calculator launch. Have you got a pushback from sellers where if the legal balance is significantly higher than the UPB, they want you to bid based on legal balance versus UPB? Say the UPB is 50, legal balance is say 70.
Right.
They're wanting you to bid based on the legal balance versus the UPB, as long as they can confirm it's collectible.
Yes, I have had that, and again, it depends on the situation. And sometimes I agree with that, and sometimes I don't.
Let's say there's equity in the deal. If the property worth $150, are you
Right.
bidding based on the 50 grand UPB or the 75 legal balance?
What's the property value?
150, say.
150.
So you have plenty of equity.
In that case, I'm comfortable going on. Well, if it's a contract for deed, I don't care. The full payoff balance doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference.
Correct. Yep.
If it's a mortgage in that situation, sure, I'm willing to go up, because there's enough equity on top of the payoff. Between the payoff and the value, there's still enough buffer there where if I take it to auction, there's a good enough chance that I'll get somebody to bid on it at auction. Then yes, I'm comfortable bidding on the unpaid balance.
But if it's worth 90 grand, only a little bit above the legal balance, are you not as comfortable then?
No, and especially if there's negative equity, then no.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, you know, one of the things I've seen come back up in the recent 6 months or so is a lot of this push to strictly base every bid on percentage of BPO and UPB and almost eliminate other factors. And I had gone through some kind of explanation, and maybe you can explain a little better, where I'd actually show a spreadsheet to a couple people to kind of explain what I meant by that. And I think that the problem with it is that people don't understand the factors, and maybe is a little too much to kind of elaborate on.
Right.
And I'll share my screen for a second to show you what I mean.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's clear enough. But if it's not clear, just let me know. So in a situation where there's a 3% coupon and an 8% coupon, right? If I'm bidding 70% of value or UPB, I'm in a situation where this thing's at $35,000 each way.
Right.
That simple change between the coupon rate here dramatically changes the P&I, of course, and then dramatically changes the return.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple yield numbers, right? Not even getting I get an XIR and everything else.
Yeah.
But I think that what we all grew up on was bidding at the stair step method back in early 2010s.
Mhm.
And now is different because the pricing has gone up. And in one case, based on this, you have a great deal. In some
Mhm.
cases, you have a terrible deal. So if it's at 8%, you're probably going to, bid way higher or way lower in illustrations. Where here you're not going to get the deal. Where
Right.
here you may actually pay too much,
Yeah.
right? If I raise this thing up to, a 10% coupon rate, you're going to be going crazy. You should actually drop this bid down because you're not going to get the return because
Right.
the sellers just see this and go, your bid is at a 17 yield. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that, does that make sense to you? I mean, I know some investors were struggling with this.
No, totally. And the other thing that I look at with that as well is if I look at something and there's only like a 2 or 3% interest rate on there, then I look at that and I go, okay, if the borrower can't make it work at 3%, then I've got nowhere to go. If I'm talking to the borrower and we're trying to negotiate something, I've got nowhere to go. And then the other part of that is the way that I do it is I'm reselling all the time. So I'll get that reperforming and then I'll resell it. So if I'm reselling a performer at a 3% coupon rate, my discount is going to be huge so that next investor can get his yield. So
And maybe explain why you have to. I've explained before. I want to see it from a different point of view. Why do you have to price something at a 3% coupon at such a discount where a 10% coupon, say I want a 12% return. Why is a 3% coupon need to be priced completely a lot versus 10% coupon rate?
So it goes back to, like you say, your yield. I'm trying to buy something on sale, but I'm still getting a return on that. Let's see. So if I look at something with the 3% coupon rate, my payment is at that $345 a month, and I paid $35 for it.
Yep.
Then the amount of money that I'm actually making on that is significantly less. But so it's 3%. If I bought it at par, then my return would be 3%.
Just make sure everyone knows par means whatever the UPB is that time is. So he'd buy for 50. He'd make the 3% return.
Right. So if I bought it at 50, I would be making 3% return on that. That's my yield. So even if I buy it on sale, if it goes up to 8%, that's great, but it's still only 8%. And typically that's, in our world, that's not high enough. If it's at a 10%, if I bought that at 10%, if I bought it at par at 10%, then I'm bringing home 10% is my yield.
Yep.
So the discount on that could be a whole lot less because the yield is going to be higher in the end.
You could buy the thing at 80%, 90% of UPB and be okay because the rate coupon on the deal is 10%.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all you have to get to, if you want to get 12, all you need to do is discount it a little bit and buy it 90% because then that coupon goes up. So bidding is strictly on UPB or BPO makes it difficult to get that return because you're eliminating or removing the coupon rate out of the equation of calculating what your return is.
Right.
And in our world, my world, I bid everything based on my desired return and back into that number. And if I'm shooting for a 10% return, I'm going to back in and say, okay, what do I have to bias at to get my yield at 10?
Right.
Versus play with numbers. I set my return and say, okay, this is the number I have to get this return. And most of the time, coupon rates at 3 or 2 or 3 or 4%, I'll just skip over it. Because for me to buy something, and this is a big thing for guys who's listening now or later on, if you see coupon rates at 3, 4, or 5%, to get that to a 10, you have to buy it at a significant discount. And it's not equivalent because there's time on this thing. If there's 1 year left versus 15 years left, that's a totally different pricing thing because the amount of payments remaining changes everything.
Yeah.
So
and in my case, I'm looking down the road. I typically try to sell whatever I'm selling that's performing, I try to sell it at about a 13 rate, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
But again, for me to get from 3 to 13,
Yeah.
I get that reperforming and resell it. I try to sell it at 13. I'm going to have to take a huge discount. So I would have to buy it then at a significant discount.
Yeah. I mean,
not likely.
Yeah. And just to show you guys what he means, if he wants to get 13% discount, I'll do this on the fly here. So we do that, and then payment amount, let's say that, and then future zero. Oh, I forgot to put negative here. I have to buy a thing at 27,000.
Yeah.
To get a gross return of 13%.
So do you usually use your spreadsheet to do like future values and that kind of thing, or are you using?
I have our big calculator that we use, and it automatically calculates that and gives me the worst case scenario and everything else. That if it's performing as the best route, it shoots out that number. If it's not the best route, and it says, listen, take buying it because our highest hurdle may be the auction. Right. If there's an equity situation, it may be the auction that keeps me on the check. Yeah. It may be rehabbing it. It may be selling it or whatever. So, I mean, in this case, as an example, to buy this to get to a 13%, our 3% and our 10%, to get our 10% to a 13, you can see I could buy this thing at 42,000 and get my 13%, which in turn is 85% of BPO.
Yeah.
So those who are watching this, understand that concept there, and understand that buying it strictly based on, I'm going to buy 60% of BPO and that's flat it.
Yeah.
Even CFDs shouldn't be priced with this flat across the board thing, because some days you're going to get a killer deal, and some days you're way overbuy. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to concept, and Nate, I would believe you. There's been a lot of calculators I've seen recently by investors who've been given out by other investors who strictly do percentages. And I shake my head and say, listen, do you understand it? And I get sometimes they don't, but they have to learn it, because sometimes the seller's gonna be ecstatic that you're bought at that rate.
Sure. No, and you have to understand the mechanics of the financial calculator and how, you really have to get a good, you don't have to be an expert, but you have to have a decent understanding of how the financial calculator works and how to make those numbers make sense, because you could get yourself into a world of trouble buying a 3 coupon rate and thinking you shot the moon, and then you're stuck with something where you're dragging, that's kind of dragging down.
And we have. I've gotten in a situation, there was a 5% coupon, it turned to 6.5%, just because I bought it at whatever it was, 45 cents, because that's what we were buying at the time. Right. And they reinstated. I went, holy crap. And I never calculated the fact that if they reinstate, where am I going to be at?
Right.
Lesson learned. I couldn't sell it. I had to hold on to it.
Yeah.
But we were able to absorb it and be what it is. Cool stuff.
So my calculator, I have different scenarios. So I look at, if I take it back into foreclosure and I resell it, then I've got my numbers plugged in, and this is kind of my expected return. And if I get a payoff, this is my expected return. If I'm reselling it as a reperformer, this is my expected return. And then I look at all those factors, including the coupon rate when I'm looking at the reperformer.
Yeah. And I hope people understand this is a little bit of math goes involved in this. And I've seen recent posts where people say, hey, why do people use calculators? Yeah, and I get that to a point, but there are so many variables that go into this that buying it strictly based on a quick number, unless you're a mathematician in your head, which I know of one person we both know that's very good at math in his head. Yeah. However, you need to understand the entire equation, how it plays in, what state it's in. Yeah. This is in Texas versus New Jersey. We're totally different pricing. Yeah. You can't do that. Coupon rate plays in a factor. Last payment received.
Last date paid, yeah.
Yeah, all these things. If it's been 5 years since they paid,
right.
There's so many factors that go into it. And Yes, that's overwhelming. And I think that,
First,
you know, we're hoping that our calculator we came out help people, but I still think you should build your own stuff
yeah,
once you understand it.
yeah.
So cool.
Or at the
Well,
very
Nathan,
least, I mean, I don't know. There's got to be tutorials on how to use a financial calculator online or something.
yeah,
But
yeah,
barring that, something like you're offering, I think is great, just to
yeah.
help people to figure out
Make next step. So
these
Nathan,
things they don't know.
do you have any deals that are going on right now that you're going crazy or anything what are you doing right now?
Um, I'm wrapping up the end of this year, so I'm selling off. Just nothing really different, I guess, but I'm just trying to make sure I get everything closed before the end of the year. I got one, the one I just was dealing with this morning that's a pain. So Texas is special. They're one of the only states where, and Michigan seems to do this as well, but Texas is one where if I'm selling, I took back a property, selling the house, and they want a US notary to notarize my documents. They're one of the only ones that
Wow.
insist that it's a US notary. So usually in that case, I live half an hour from the border. I drive down to Champlain, New York. It takes me all of, 35, 40 minutes. And I drive down to the little community bank there and she signs everything, no problem. Easy as pie, done. That's off the table, border's closed. The US Embassy is my second choice in town and I have to make an appointment and it's
Yeah.
pain in the butt. They're closed to the public, so that's off the table. So I just found a service this morning. They're going to do it, but it takes like a full 2 weeks to turn the
Whoa.
docs around. So that's what I got, but I think we can still get it closed by the end of the year. I just trying to get all my numbers in and boost up the portfolio as best we can.
Awesome, Nathan. Well, I'm gonna cut it off there. I think we
Yeah.
did about half-hour talk. I look forward to doing this more, man. You have a lot of knowledge. You're quiet, but you have a ton of experience in different aspects in this field. I always love hanging out and talking with for a few minutes. But I'm gonna end it here.
Sure.
I'll replay this later in the day for anyone who missed it. I think we got some awesome stuff in here that we'll explain more. Nathan, I hope we do this again real soon.
I think between you and me, we could do this for hours.
I know. I'm like, wait, I should end this and keep going with it. I think that people just understand it. Like when you're in the space, there's people that you gravitate towards and people we see over the years, over and over and over again. And for that, I'm really appreciative of this entire space. It gives you a reason to do certain things. And as I said last week, this is the only reason I go on Facebook or social media is for this. Other than that, I really don't care about anyone else.
No, that's it. That's it.
Well, Nathan, I'm going to let you go, man. I'm going to end this live video. But we'll definitely do this again real soon. Hopefully in about a week or two, maybe right after Christmas, we'll run it again.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Dave. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
All right, bye.